Hello artists! Today we're going to work with texture. Texture is how something feels. Words like smooth, bumpy, lumpy, rough, sticky, slimy. Those are good texture words that let us know how something feels. But when we're drawing, sometimes we forget how to create texture on a flat surface like our paper. Well, that's what we're going to work with today. And when we're all done working with textures, you can combine some of them and make a texture monster for our spooky Halloween that's coming up. Ooh, I think that's next week. Well, anyway, let's get started making some textures. I'm going to use a Sharpie so you can see it better on screen, but you don't need a Sharpie to make texture. You can use a pencil, you can use crayons, markers, really anything you can use. So let's start with making fish scales as a texture. So using the letter U, starting here, I can connect it some more and keep going. And I have one row of fish scales, but we know that fish scales are layered. So I'm going to come down here underneath and start a new row of fish scales and kind of create a pattern from there. And again, go one less to create fish scales. And this creates a texture as well. So I'll label that scales. We can also just use lines. You can use quick lines close together. This is called hatching. You can even layer lines. So say I'm going to go this way with my lines, and then I can layer them with lines going in the opposite direction. And this is called cross hatching. This is a good way to make something look like it's rough. So I'll label this cross hatching. Another way to show texture, maybe that something's rough, we could do hatching again and more cross hatching. But on top of that, we could use little scribbles, controlled scribbles. And this could be a good way to show that something looks rough, like rocks, or maybe your carpet is a little rough. So we could label this rough. Maybe we want something to look like it's bumpy. Using the letter U again, but upside down and different sides and angles, we can make things look bumpy, or lumpy is another good word. Kind of also reminds me of macaroni shape. So this is a good way to show something's bumpy. You could even call it lumpy or fluffy even. So one texture could be used for many different things. Maybe we also could use kind of controlled scribbling in a circle shape. We could also kind of use this as fluffy as well. All right. Maybe we want something to look like it's spiky. And to do that, we could use really sharp, skinny triangles and layer them to make something look spiky, kind of like a porcupine. If we want things to look like they're behind each other, we draw them a little smaller and we don't draw lines through. We're wanting to create the illusion that these spikes are all behind each other. So that's why I stopped drawing and not drawing through the ones that are in front. So we can call this one spiky. What if we wanted to draw something slimy? I'm going to use the letter U again. So we've used the letter U for scales and bumpy, lumpy, and fluffy. We can use the letter U again to help us make something look like it's slimy or dripping. So to get myself started, I'm going to draw a really tall, long, skinny U. And I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going and make a smaller U. Maybe a little bit longer, maybe curve it a little bit more, shorter, longer. Make something look like it's dripping and slimy. So we'll call this one Slimy. What if you wanted to make something look like it's really hairy? Maybe I'll make my little monster character down here. To make something look like it's really hairy, you can use a bunch of lines, kind of like hatching all of these lines together. But I'm going to show you how you can put it together for a little monster. So I'm going to start down here. Maybe I'll start with my shoes. Give them some sneakers here. And maybe I'll give them some eyeballs and some eyebrows, some more controlled scribbling. And now I want to make it look like that my monster has a lot of hair, like it's really hairy. I'm just going to start adding lines close to each other, next to each other. And then I want to give my monster a head. So I'm going to round out the top there and keep adding some lines. Like it's really hairy. I could also do this with colors. So that could be my little monster with a bunch of hair, kind of like Cousin It. But say I wanted to do this, say I drew my eyes. So I'll kind of draw these same eyes again and these eyebrows. But say I wanted to use colors instead. Maybe I'll grab some greens. Get my green crayons here. And I'll use my lightest color first. And I'm going to color in all the hair. So here I've got like my really, really light green. But that's not going to help me show texture. That's just coloring in solid. So this is where my other colors can come in, where I could go in and add these lines, these hatching lines, to create the illusion that there's more hair. So there's a little bit darker green, but that's not showing up too much. Sometimes we have to layer colors to really get the effect that something is really there. So I'm going to use this darker green on top. And there we go. So that's two different ways that you can create texture. I use just my marker for this one, and then I use 3 different greens to help create texture for my really hairy monster. I do have one more finished example of a monster with texture. I gave this one some wings and some antenna, but I used a zigzag line on either side, and at the bottom to make this monster look like it has hair. Again, I used 3 different blues. I used a light blue to color the whole background of the body, and then I used 2 different darker blues to just draw lines to show that this monster is really hairy. I can't wait to see what monsters you come up with. Don't forget to put them on our Google Classroom.